Panning. It's the holy grail of motorsports photography. Everyone wants it, but most struggle to get it right. In this video, I'll reveal the techniques that top pros use to nail panning shots each and every time. Let's get into it. So what exactly is panning? In motorsports photography, it's the technique of moving your camera horizontally to track a moving subject, whether a race car or a motorcycle, as it speeds past you on the track. The goal is to precisely match the speed of the moving vehicle with your camera's movement. When you succeed, the car remains relatively sharp, but the static background, the grandstands, the pit wall, the asphalt, blurs into smooth horizontal streaks of color. This effect instantly creates an illusion of high dynamic speed, transforming a simple capture of a race car into a dramatic action shot. Why bother with panning anyway? Well, it's the most effective technique for conveying motion and speed in a single image. A static picture of a race car looks kind of boring and flat, almost like it's parked on a racetrack, while a pan shot looks fast, creating an immediate sense of adrenaline. Before we move into the actual technique, let's first talk about the type of camera gear that you're going to need. You're definitely going to want a DSLR or mirrorless camera that allows you for full manual control. An iPhone is just not going to cut it. For lenses, you'll want a mid-range zoom, preferably anywhere from 70 to 300 millimeters, which is what I use and is pretty much my workhorse. Another thing to consider is if your lens has built-in stabilization. Manufacturers will use different names for this feature, like vibration reduction, image stabilizer, or optical stabilization. If your lens has this option, there should be a switch to turn it on. Another thing that you can use is a monopod. Since most of the time, if you're right on the track, you're not allowed to use an actual camera stand. So a monopod is really helpful as it will add more stability and also reduce arm fatigue. I personally rarely use them and prefer to shoot handheld. A circular polarizer filter, or CPL, reduces glare and unwanted reflections, especially off of shiny paintwork and glass. It also enhances color saturation and cuts down light by 1 to 2 stops. You may also consider using a variable ND filter, which acts like a pair of sunglasses on your camera, letting you dial in several stops of light reduction, which can be useful if you're shooting at shutter speeds like 1/60th of a second in really bright sunlight. Now let's talk about camera settings, starting with shutter speed. I recommend starting with something like 1/125th of a second. Slower speeds give more blur, but are very hard to capture, especially when you're just starting out. Faster speeds are easier, but less dynamic. For your aperture, I would recommend using anywhere from f4 to f8, depending on how bright it is. When I started out, I would use a wide aperture, like say f2, because while it did give a shallow depth of field and would blur out the background, it also made it really difficult to keep the car in focus. For your ISO, just keep it as low as possible to minimize noise and adjust accordingly. For your focus mode, set your camera to continuous autofocus to constantly track the car. If your camera has it, you can also use subject detection, and there should be an option there for automobile or car or vehicle. If you don't have this option, manual works just fine. A lot of times I will use this, especially if I'm just going to be in one stationary area. And what I'll do is use the pace car, or where they're doing the first pass around the track at a slower speed. I'll take that time to make my focus adjustments and really dial it in. So when it's time for the actual race, I have it set exactly to where I want it. Set your drive mode to continuous burst mode. This one's actually really important, and you want to set it to at least 5 frames per second. Shooting in short bursts will dramatically increase your odds of capturing that perfect sharp frame. Another thing to consider is using shutter priority mode. The reason you should consider using this is because shutter speed controls motion blur. You set the exact shutter speed that you need, and the camera will adjust the aperture automatically. This can be very helpful during long race days when you're moving between sun and shadow, and keeps the exposure consistent so you can focus on movement and composition. The only caveat is to watch your aperture values. If it flashes or goes extreme like f22, then your camera is struggling. What you want to do then is just adjust your ISO or use a filter to balance out the light. Now for the technique. This is where practice comes in. For your stance, keep your feet shoulder width apart, body facing where the car will be passing by, rotating smoothly at your waist. Support your lens with the palm of your left hand underneath. You just want to cradle it, don't grip it tightly. And what this will do is give you a smoother, controlled horizontal movement. Start tracking early, following the car before pressing the shutter. You want it to be a smooth, continuous motion, so don't just jerk the camera. Imagine you're part of the car's movement, almost like there's a magnet attached to the end of the camera and the car is moving the camera for you. Gently press the shutter and keep following through even after it fires. Just like a golfer swing, you want to follow through. Keep your autofocus point on the part of the car that you want to stay sharp, which will usually be the main sponsor logo or the driver. So what are the best places to position yourself on the track? I would avoid straightaways, as these cars are going 200 plus miles an hour and can be very hard to capture at slow shutter speeds, especially if you're just starting out. The best locations that I find are before or after turns, entry, mid-corner, or exit, where the cars are braking or accelerating. Being farther away from the track can also help, because if you're too close, it's going to be really difficult to match the speed. Another option is having an elevated position slightly above the safety fence and will give you a clearer view. Now let's talk about a few challenges that you may face and how to overcome them. If you're having issues with the car staying sharp, you may consider the fact that you're overcompensating and those jittery pans are what's going to cause blur. A good fix for this is just take a nice deep breath and then exhale as you're doing the pan. If you're still having trouble keeping the car in focus, it might be an issue with continual autofocus. And this is because the autofocus is searching and hunting at the wrong moment. And if you're using a Fuji camera, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So the solution to this is just to switch to single point autofocus or manual focus, and then just pre-focus on the exact spot where the car will pass, and then just pan and shoot without autofocus interference. If the background isn't blurred enough, then you might want to adjust your shutter speed. If you're shooting f1, you can get away with a higher shutter speed. But say if it's maybe a Trans Am, you can definitely experiment and move down to say 1/80th to 1/60th of a second, and you should get a better result. And really, it's not about knowing what shutter speed to use, it's really just about the feel and the practice. So start moderate, review, adjust. Every track, every car is different. Another common issue is you might get the front part of the car sharp, but the rear is blurry. And that's just physics. As you rotate around a fixed point, different parts of the car move at different angular speeds. Being closer is going to make it worse. Another thing is check your stabilization. Older OIS systems can fight panning motion. If there's no Mode 2 or panning option, then you might just want to turn stabilization off. Now let's be clear, this does take a lot of practice. Thousands of shots with only a handful of keepers is totally normal. What I would do is practice on busy streets, just using cars, bikes, joggers. The principles are the same. Panning motorsport photography is incredibly challenging, but very rewarding. So remember, practice, practice, practice. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, go ahead and smash that like button and also hit the subscribe button so you can be the first to receive real-life practical tips on how to improve your car videography and photography skills. My name is Andrew Cooper at andrewcoopervideo.com. I'll see you next time. Take care.